Welcome back to another movie breakdown. We are DKKS Productions. My name is Charlie Cannon.
My name is Ian F. Scott.
Yes, sir. And today we got something special for you. Why don't you go ahead and tell them, sir?
Oh, I'm happy to. Today, we are breaking down everyone's favorite movie of all time, 1987's The Princess Bride.
It's my number 5 movie of all time, personally. I don't know about yourself.
I'd say it's in my top 5 as well.
There you have it. So you guys are in for a real treat. We had about 23 views with the last one. We're going for 24 this time. I know it's a bit ambitious, but we're really going to give you guys some insight that you might not find anywhere else. So I think this is going to be a real...
We're going to knock it out of the park just for you.
Absolutely.
Just for all 24 of you. So, grab your cigar, grab your drink, and buckle the F up, Buttercup! Why don't you tell us what we're puffing on today?
It's not a bad idea. Oh, okay. So, what we're puffing on today, we got some Party Gras. As you can tell, very fancy. Definitely not $12 cigars. You can't find these anywhere in the United States besides all the gas stations around Atlanta. And I'm super excited for this. As you can tell, the casing is incredibly fancy. So, it's probably going to take about an hour and a half to get these out of the casing, get them cut up before we can actually get going. But yeah, that's what's on the menu in terms of puff
Stuff.
and stuff. Puff and stuff.
But the real question is, what are we drinking tonight?
I like that he asked that because, you see, yesterday I picked this up. It's called Screwball. There you go. Peanut butter flavored whiskey. Now, I've never had peanut butter whiskey in my life besides yesterday when I got a little excited, had myself a little tasty taste. I never heard of peanut butter whiskey. Have you?
I've not.
So what we're going to do is we're going to try this bad boy out right now. Just break it in nice and good, and then we'll, sip on it throughout the video. So, without further ado, these are double shot glasses, so I'm going to go a little, heavy with it. No, I'm not. I'm going to go about half of that. Bada bing. Bada boom. All right, so first smell, what do you think?
I can definitely smell the peanut butter.
Definitely smell the... Jesus. Okay, yeah, no, it's a bit overwhelming in a sense. But, maybe the taste will make up for that absolutely disgusting smell we just had. All right, so without further ado, slosh it.
That was fucking good.
Yeah, that is absolutely just overwhelming with peanut butter taste. I would almost describe it as sort of like a fireball, but instead of cinnamon, it's peanut butter.
And actually drinkable.
And actually drinkable, yeah. So,
but that almost kind of tastes like a Reese's peanut butter cup.
It does, because you can taste that like chocolatey.
Exactly, bro. It tastes like you just drank a Reese's peanut butter cup and
So yeah, I'm gonna run to the store real quick and pick up some Reese's.
And it is pronounced Reese's.
Yeah, let's go ahead and
everyone
get that
out there that pronounces it Reese's, you are fucking wrong.
Yeah.
All right, wrong.
Yeah, this is not a matter of opinion. Also, if you say Reese's Pieces,
You're just stupid.
yeah, seriously. Jesus Christ. Enough about that. I could honestly go on for hours about this, but I'm not going to because you guys want to hear about The Princess Bride. We want to talk about The Princess Bride. What do you think, Keaton?
I would love to talk about The Princess Bride. Absolutely.
I mean, what do you think about?
Oh, yeah, that's
about right. All right. So we're going to go through the entire bottle tonight. I'm very excited for that. Very excited about waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning after drinking this whole thing. What do you think?
That whole bottle?
Yeah, why not? It's a bit much, but hey, we got a lot to talk
for
about.
a while. Yeah.
Exactly. So we're going to go ahead and get situated. We'll see you guys on the other side. Be good.
I want to talk a little bit about the editing. The editor on this film, his name was Robert Layton, and he's worked with Rob Reiner a couple times. He worked with him again on Harry Met Sally. And I really love it when directors and editors have a business relationship, because when you have a relationship with a collaborator, it makes the movie, I think, so much better. But some things that really stood out to me about editing in this movie, the composer, what I'm assuming probably happened is the composer watched the movie and then wrote a good amount of music to the action that's happening on film. At the end, when Count Rugen and Inigo Montoya are having their final sword fight, when he finally finds the strength to keep going, and they clash swords first, few times. There's a music cue on each one of those clashes, which I think is just really well done. And then the eye lines are, I think, in this movie are immaculate. Maybe I'm just thinking that because I was really paying attention to the editing for this video. But once you set up a scene with a master shot, eye lines are exceptionally important because you can do a scene, you can do certain shots of a scene without both actors present at the same time. Like if you're getting my coverage and I'm supposed to be talking to someone who's behind the camera, so say my scene partner's over there, he could not even be there, and I can just be looking at where he's supposed to be standing. But I have to, otherwise the audience is going to see my eye lines kind of be all over the place, and it's just going to jumble everyone. So, well done. Also, there are quite a few continuity errors. There's one part at the very beginning when the grandfather opens the book. He opens the book when the camera is over his shoulder, and then it cuts to a straight-on close-up of him, and then you see him opening the book again. But the book was already established to be open, so that's one small thing. But there's also just a couple other things. Continuity errors don't really piss me off. I'm just harping on the editing because I'm supposed to be breaking it down. Rob Reiner. Rob Reiner is such a wholehearted, just like good guy. He was in The Wolf of Wall Street. He actually has a lot more acting credits than he does directing credits. But I appreciate someone who can do everything in front of and behind the camera. He also directed A Few Good Men and Misery, which are also very good movies. I mean, I don't think there's actually one part about this movie that I don't like, and I feel like Rob Reiner really brought a lot to the table when it came to directing. I feel like he and William Goldman, who wrote the book The Princess Bride and also adapted his own book into the screenplay for the movie, I feel like he and him, Rob Reiner and William Goldman, talked at length about what the movie had to look like. They had a vision, and I think they shared that vision, and they really did a really good job of bringing it to life. And I think Rob Reiner kind of had a very big part to play in how the actors approach their roles. I think they talked quite a bit about who Wesley should be and who the Dread Pirate Roberts could be, because really they're two different people, they're two different characters. And Robin Wright, Robin Wright is an exquisite actress, I think, but I think she really does very well in this film. Rob Reiner really gave her a good, right out the gate part, and I think that's just really good directing on his part.
So I'm going to talk about the cinematographer of this film a little bit. His name is Adrian Biddle. You've probably never heard the name before unless you studied film. He's done such films as The Princess Bride. He did Thelma and Louise. He did Aliens, which is one of my personal favorites. He did V for Vendetta, which is another one of my personal favorites. Now, unfortunately, V for Vendetta was his final film he ever made. He passed away at the young age of 52 in England from a heart attack, taken too soon. This was an incredibly talented man. I've always watched his films without knowing exactly who was the cinematographer, but I've always had a great appreciation for a lot of his shots. Now I want to talk a few in the film itself. The opening shot is one that sticks out to me every time, also because you see it again at the end of the film at the opening of the credits, but it's when Buttercup is riding across the field towards Wesley, before we even meet Wesley for the first time. There's of course the shot also of them, when they have their first kiss by the sunset. I think that's kind of iconic. I think it's on the cover, in fact. It's just beautiful, ew, kissing, grow up. A few other shots that I love throughout the film. Of course, there's the cliffs of Insanity when we see them climbing up. Everything there is done perfectly. Now, I feel like something that's not talked about enough, what it takes to film a well-choreographed fight scene is essentially just a ton of hard work. Not only do you have to have your shot list, but you have to coordinate with the fight choreographer about how they're going to be doing things and how it can work with the entire crew behind the camera. And the sword fight between Inigo Montoya and Wesley, or Dread Pirate Roberts at the time, is just incredible. It sticks out to me greatly because when I first saw the movie, I only saw that scene on TV, and I used to see it all the time. just that scene, and I'd always have to go to soccer practice afterwards. But when I finally saw the full film, of course, I was blown away. But I would have to say my favorite shot in the entire film is not even one that's spectacular or grandeur in any way. It's at the end when Wesley stands up to Humperdinck after he's been, paralyzed essentially in his entire body from the miracle pill or from coming back from the dead. Only the mostly dead stands up, points his sword at Humperdinck, says, "Drop your sword." Powerful moment, incredible moment. There's a ton of other shots that I'd love to talk about, but our last video was 54 fucking minutes, so I'm going to keep it pretty concise. What do you think about the shots in this film? What do you think about Adrian Biddle as a cinematographer?
I think it was great. Like I said earlier, it's a simple film. There's nothing really exceedingly fancy about the cinematography. There's no tracking shots. There's one, maybe two aerial shots. Actually, when they're climbing out the cliffs of Insanity, there's a couple pretty good shots.
Yeah, actually, really well done. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And but other than that, really, pretty much anything is on level with the actors. Dolly shot, a couple handhelds probably here and there, but I think the simplicity works for the film.
I agree. It doesn't need to be too extravagant. There doesn't need to be some crazy aerial or just incredibly angular or tilted shots. Sometimes simple is the best way to go, and I think that this film in general, that is a kind of feeling that comes across from it. It's nothing too complex about this film in terms of any aspect, but it still really does get something out of you, and I think that really comes across in the cinematography. Do you have any shots in particular that stick out to you?
I like the shots of them climbing up the cliffs of Insanity.
Sure, yeah.
The cinematography of finding those parts of the cliff and that look most scenic or whatever to shoot the film
right.
and put in. I think cinematography takes a very special talent and a very special eye, and I think he had that.
I would agree with that. As I mentioned, Adrian Biddle passed away at the young age of 52 years old from a heart attack. It was great talent, great man. I cannot wait to do more films that he's done, such as Aliens, such as V for Vendetta, because there's a lot of great shots in those films to break down. But in terms of The Princess Bride, he absolutely nailed it, and we're very thankful that we had such a talented man behind the camera for this one.
All right, so let's talk about the acting in this film a little bit. It's a completely stacked cast, but I have 3 cast members that I want to point out individually. Cary Elwes, first of all, as Wesley. I think this was one of his first roles that he had. It was the first breakout role that he really had, and one of the only breakout roles that he's ever really had, besides Saw, which of course is an incredible film as well. But he does a fantastic job in this film. When we first meet him, he's kind of one-dimensional. He's this pretty boy, farm boy. Throughout the film, you learn a lot more about him. I think he did a great job bringing all the emotions, and of course, the main emotion that this film tries to get across is true love. True love. It's beautiful. So he does a great job. Not my favorite performance. Now let's talk about Christopher Guest as Count Rugen, the Six-Fingered Man. There's something about the way he does this. I feel like when everybody got this script, that they kind of just took it as it was. You read the lines, you decide how you want to play your character. I think personally that Christopher Guest decided to approach this role as if Count Rugen was a psychopath. He shows very little emotion besides a possible hinted relationship with Humperdinck in kind of a few moments. It's a little strange, but that's kind of up for interpretation. That's how I interpreted it a little bit. But he says everything so, yes, and then we're going to do this. Eyes wide, kind of deadpan, you understand? And I just thought he did a great job of getting that apart. Now, I think the role that really stole the show is, of course, Manny Patinkin. I can never say his name right. I never have. I've always known it. I've always seen it. But he played the part of Inigo Montoya, which, if you know this movie or if you know of this movie, the first line that comes to mind is, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Everybody knows the role. You see it everywhere. There's a lot more to that line, I think, than what most people realize. I mean, that is the scene when he first kind of sets it up, when he's talking to Wesley after the Cliffs of Insanity, and they're speaking about the history that he had with the Six-Fingered Man. It's just absolutely, there's something tragic and there's something beautiful in it, in my opinion. He does a great job with that. And he also has a way of delivering lines where he could be seeing the most tragic stuff, but he's decided that his character will play it this way, where they'll be talking like the Six Finger Man. He has a slight smile on his face. It's sort of like that whole suppressing emotions things. Guys, for the most part, of course, you know, there's nothing wrong with being vulnerable, with being emotional. A lot of the times, guys will try to hide sadness or grief with either like a little downplaying it or getting angry about it, and I think that he kind of captured that perfectly, and that's exactly what Inigo Montoya would do. And at the end, when he finally does start to get his revenge, it starts to come out a little bit more. He's lashing out, and when he finally delivers that, "I want my father back, you son of a bitch," it's just, it really hits home. Every time, we watched it the other night, it gave me goosebumps for the millionth time, and I've seen this movie, I cannot stress, 1,000,000 times. And it's just very impactful, and like I said, I believe it steals the movie.
So, what do you have to say about the acting in this film, sir?
I think Mandy Patinkin was snubbed at the Oscars that year.
Absolutely.
For sure. You were talking a little bit earlier about Mandy Patinkin's acting, especially in the part where he kills Count Rugen finally, which I think is such a great moment in the movie, because pretty much from the get-go, we know Inigo's motivation, why he's there. We know exactly what he is out for, and then it's just stone cold revenge for the man that killed his father, which I think is just pure. You know, in that sense, you know, the man loved his father and wants vengeance. You know, 20 years later. So I think it's a big moment, but. Actually, Mandy Patinkin's father died from cancer like the same year that they shot it, and he said in interviews that when he stabs Count Rugen and delivers that killing blow and says, "I want my father back, you son of a bitch," Mandy Patinkin said he was imagining that he was talking to the cancer that took his father. And I think, as actors, you got to bring realism to
a part of yourself, right?
Absolutely, you have to, and Mandy Patinkin delivered in a huge way.
Absolutely.
What
Right.
about you?
Well, as I mentioned, I got the three that I feel like are the standout performances, and Cary Elwes, Christopher Guest, and Mandy Patinkin. But you know, a few other people I feel like we need to mention. Robin Wright. I feel like you mentioned that this was one of her first roles, if not her first
Yeah, it was like
breakout role. She did a great job. Of course, Robin Wright. We've seen her in other things as well. Shout out to Forrest Gump. Great film.
House of Cards.
House of Cards, right? She ended up taking the wheel of that show once Kevin Spacey did his thing. We had some cameos in this film, like Billy Crystal and Carol West as Miracle Max and Miracle Max's wife.
Get back, witch! I'm not a witch, I'm your wife! But after what you just said, I'm not even sure I want to be that anymore!
An iconic scene. They had, it's well known that they had Mandy Patinkin almost burst a kidney, I think, laughing at them on that.
Yeah, like Mandy Patinkin was laughing so hard that he like cracked a rib or something like that.
They were great. I also want to mention Peter Falk as the grandfather. I don't think there is. I mentioned how whenever Inigo Montoya delivers that killing blow and he says, "I want my father back, you son of a bitch," how that gives me goosebumps every time. Another part that gives me goosebumps every time is the very end when little Fred Savage says, "Grandpa, maybe you can come back and read it again tomorrow," and he just turns around and says, "As you wish." And there's just something. I don't know. He wasn't even that old of a guy at the time. Rest in peace. He died a few years ago. He was a middle-aged man playing this grandfather, and he really came across as this loving, caring, just very genuine old man, and it really delivers every single time to me personally.
Because at the beginning, the kid's not excited about getting the Princess Bride book.
Right.
He's like, a book? Really? But then he wants his grandfather to come over again tomorrow because they have that moment.
I think that the fact that we have this grandfather reading it to his sick grandson seems very real, and it makes it that much easier to connect to it. But just overall, we can agree, stacked cast, great performances, and it would have been easy to be kind of lazy with a script like this when it's as simple as it is. Nobody fell short. Everybody delivered, and I'm very appreciative of the entire cast.
As am I.
Nobody cares.
That's true. And as we all know, what comes with great fantasy movies about pirates come great sword fights. What do you think about the Chatty Duelist scene?
It's one of my favorite scenes ever. In fact, as I mentioned, when I first saw this movie, when I was first exposed to it, the only scene I did see the first 5 or 6 times was that scene. right? So
Hell of a scene.
after seeing that and going out to soccer practice every time on the way to soccer practice, I'm thinking, what the hell is this movie? Like, this is incredible. Like, this is what I'm looking for in a movie. I'm 6 years old. These dudes this guy's wearing a mask. This guy has long, flowing locks. And they're just going at it. Not only are they going at it, they're talking the whole time. Great dialogue, great fight choreography, and just, it was well shot as well. Once again, Adrian Biddle, you absolutely nailed it on that. And yeah, it's one of my favorite scenes ever.
You can't fake it. Yeah, I mean, if you don't know what you're doing with a blade, even an untrained eye will be able to tell.
Right.
You, like, you know what I'm saying? It's just
Especially
one of those
nowadays
things.
when we have so many great fight scenes to look at with swords. If you're making a film and the fighting is not exceptional, which is what people are used to at this point, then they're gonna comment on it. They're gonna have something against it.
Absolutely. Peter Diamond was the stunt coordinator. When you're directing a fight scene, I think the stunt coordinator and the cinematographer is one of the most key elements that you have to have.
Right.
Because shooting a fight scene is exceptionally difficult. You want to be pulled back from the action. In my opinion, I want to see every little detail in the fight, which means the camera has to be pulled way back. And a lot of times in movies, especially in Batman Begins, the camera's kind of like in the action, and it's handheld, and it's just really jumbled and
The shaky cam.
The shaky cam, which does, for certain things, offer a unique lens, no pun intended, a unique lens to a fight, because fights are very jumbled. But sword fighting, you can't jumble that.
Right.
And the choreography was immaculate. And they're talking about actual fencing techniques in that scene, like the Benetti's defense and the Capoferro and the Agrippa.
Right.
Those are all actual fencing terms. So, well done on Mandy Patinkin and Cary Elwes on dedicating themselves to nailing that choreography.
Absolutely. Well, I know that in almost every shot that at least you see Mandy Patinkin, it is him.
Yeah.
So I would say that it's probably the same for Cary Elwes. Some of the things you see these guys doing when you can recognize them is still high level, shows hours, not hours, I would say weeks of hard training and dedication to learning this to learning this choreography.
And I'd say that scene alone probably took at least a week to film. And again, that's editing.
I'll say, we have filmed fight scenes together, just like hand-to-hand stuff, that we have worked on for weeks at a time, and this is for just one camera angle. And I know how much hard work we would put into those, and that's with no weapons. So to watch something like this, you just have this greater appreciation for it, knowing exactly how much hard work and dedication was put into something like that. And I don't think there are many, I think this might be the only big fight scene in the movie, and it comes about a quarter of the way into the movie, as opposed to how most films would do the big fight scene at the end of the movie. But it really does deliver, and you're not sitting there wondering when the next big fight scene's going to happen. You don't necessarily even need to see it. At the end, the hero and the bad guy have a confrontation. It's incredibly pleasing without a huge fight. But once again, the fight choreography in this movie just absolutely delivered 100%.
Even though fight scenes might not be your thing, really pay attention to it next time you see one in a movie, because it takes so much work to, physical work, takes studying. You have to have complete trust in your scene partner to know what they're doing.
So yeah, Peter Diamond absolutely killed it. The stunt coordinator for the film, and Adrian Biddle, they worked hand in hand. Of course, Rob Reiner as well. It's a huge collaboration, and I think when you have a perfect collaboration between actors, director, stunt and fight coordinators, and cinematographers, you get a scene kind of like this.
And like I mentioned in Baby Driver, film work is a huge collaboration. Without any one of those parts, something fails. And
Nothing failed.
Nothing failed. It's great. It's great all around.
Cheers.
Cheers. He directed A Few Good Men.
A Few Good Men. That's
He
right.
directed Misery. He directed When Harry Met Sally with Billy Crystal.
That's right. I would say that I know Rob Reiner most for two things. I knew him from The Wolf of Wall Street, where he plays Leo DiCaprio's dad.
Yeah, he plays Max Belfort is his character.
Right. Which I thought he was great in that. But the main thing, when I think of Rob Reiner, I think of The Princess Bride. And I feel like the director is responsible in the end for the overall feeling that you have when you leave the film. You mentioned sort of that this is a comedy film. There are comedy moments in it without. I've never watched this film and my first thought was, oh, that was hilarious, you know?
Same, I agree.
And of course, it is classified as a comedic movie because there are funny moments and I do laugh throughout the film. But overall, the feeling you get, once again, you know, like with Baby Driver, I said it's a feel-good film. You feel good after you watch it. I've never watched The Princess Bride, no matter what I'm going through, no matter what mood I'm in, and felt bad afterwards. I always feel good. I always feel good watching it. It's a feel-good film, and I feel like that is the result of Rob Reiner's vision being brought to life.
Because the director is involved. He is one of the only people on a film set that is involved from start to finish.
Right.
You know, pretty much, especially with a movie like this where a writer is adapting his own screenplay, like, he has to have complete trust in a director to bring that screenplay to life. And so he was there in pre-production. He was calling shots there, obviously on set during shooting. He was calling the shots, and in post, he kind of has like the final say in which shot is used, and it's kind of like how it looks aesthetically.
Right.
So the director is one of the most important, probably the most important job.
That beautifully shot, you know, like I said, the overall feeling that it brings across. I feel like we're kind of underplaying the whole director thing because there's not much that we can say without being redundant on the whole matter. Overall, I'm just going to give him a 10 out of 10. Any issues that I had with the film when I first saw it, which I can't even remember now, if I did have any, they're all gone now. You know, I don't care if I notice an error here or an error there. None of that matters because this film is so near and dear to me personally, and I'm trying to be as objective as possible with this, but I think that he really did hit a home run with this film, and I don't think that another film will ever be made that kind of gives you the same impression as The Princess Bride.
Rob Reiner, you the man.
Cheers. That the editor did a great job, because this is literally, and it feels like this, a storybook brought to life, and so there was nothing fancy that needed to be done. There was no supercut, long transition, anything like that. It was as simple as the film itself, and Robert Layton did a fantastic job at what he needed to do and what needed to be done. And what needed to be done was to bring this beautiful piece of art to life, and he did a great job.
Right, and we're not editors, so I think we're both, now that we're really starting to pay attention to every little aspect of the movie, we're paying more attention to editing
Right.
than we have in the past. So,
Right, and I think it says something also, because I mentioned that like people don't really notice editing until there's a mistake. As you mentioned, editing is super difficult, you know, especially when you have to go through stuff like, because what we're doing right now, editing this is difficult enough, and we're not even wearing lavs, we're not wearing...
there's no boom mic.
There's no boom mic. You don't have to mix the visual with the audio, because that is where it really becomes a nightmare. And I know that there are a few instances in The Princess Bride where not everything may match up perfectly. That doesn't matter. Not to me, at least. It may matter to some people. Some people who, you know, there are the people who see something and just look for something to dislike. They might, you know, take a jab at that. But otherwise, it doesn't affect the film in any manner to me.
Yeah, so I got a couple things. First of all, if you're watching this movie with like an overly critical eye, just fuck off.
Mm-hmm. It's not the kind of film to
enjoy the movie. Enjoy the movie. And if you're an editor and you're watching this movie trying to judge every little thing about the editing, like, unless you're doing it for a class, just stop.
Right. It's just annoying.
Yeah,
Makes
it's
it
pretentious.
It's negative.
Enjoy a feel-good movie for what a feel-good movie is. You know, like I said, I think the simplicity works. And honestly, I think that if there were over-the-top, you know, editing techniques like there are in Christopher Nolan movies, I'm not saying it would take away from the movie, but I wouldn't have the same feel about the movie as I do.
Right. I would say that it would take away from the movie. you know? Like, if it was overly edited, if it was overly cut in certain scenes and everything. This film is driven by the story itself, the actors, and the scenery.
Yes.
I would say. Those are the main driving forces of this film. You don't want anything else to take away from that, because that would take away from the film itself.
Right.
And, you know, I feel like it was perfectly edited.
Yeah. And kind of going back to, you know, how difficult editing can be, it's not just, you know, taking the footage that you have and then putting it in the right order. You got color correction, which is a huge part.
Mm-hmm.
You got continuity, which I kind of brought up a little bit as kind of like a critique. But that's a big part of editing. You have to make sure the shots match up, or, you know, the set matches up between shots. And, you know, months later when you're editing and you tell the director, like, we have to reshoot this scene, or we need to get audio for this scene, you call those actors in a few months later and they do what's called pickup shots. You do what's called ADR, and pretty much that's just like voice acting, where the actor sits down in a room in a sound booth, and either they look at themselves on camera and they have to like say the line exactly as they did to match up with the lips. Pretty much they're like lip sync with themselves,
Right.
essentially. There's a couple, especially with the grandfather. There are a couple parts where, you know, his audio is overlaid when he's not on camera. When Buttercup jumps into the water with the shrieking eels, says, you know what that sound is, Highness? Those are the shrieking eels. You even see me talking, but you hear the grandfather's voice, and the voice matches up perfectly with the lips, and that was, you know, ADR.
Right.
Because the Peter Falk had to sit in the studio and watch Wallace Shawn, and it takes a minute to get it right. So
Right.
I think that's just key. I think it's simple editing techniques that, you know, like any trained editor can do, but still, I mean, it takes talent.
Yeah, it delivers. So, cheers to you,
Robert Layton.
Robert Layton. All right, so that's pretty much all that we have to say about the minute details of The Princess Bride, one of our favorite films ever. As we mentioned, it's in our top 5, but we're going to go ahead and give it a ranking. What would you rate this film at, 1 out of 10?
Do you want to do it at the same time again, like we did last time?
I'm down with that. Wait, let me think real quick. I'm down with that. Let's go.
All right, on 3.
Yep.
1, 2, 3.
9.6.
Oh, I thought we were going to the same
Damn
place.
close.
Damn close.
All right.
Why 9.6 for you?
I'm trying to be as strict as possible with this ranking system. You know, going 1 out of 10. There's only so many, but I have some films that will fit the 10 category. As I mentioned, this is my 5th favorite film of all time. Everything above this, I'm going to rank a 9.6 or higher. Honestly, I have no gripes with this movie, even in the slightest. It's one of my favorite films. He knows personally. We've watched this together 755,000 times.
At least.
At least.
We've known
yeah.
each other for a long time, too. So.
Yeah, too long. But why 9.7?
I love this movie, and, you know, I'm really trying to hold back on, you know, giving everything like a 10, because clearly we're going to be breaking down mostly movies that we love, so all the movies that we love, that we break down, are going to be pretty high ranking for me.
Awesome.
This is one of my top 5 favorite films of all time, so there's nothing
Right.
stopping me from giving it a 10. There's just other movies that I like more that I will give a 10.
Sure. And we'll get to those eventually as well. You'll hear some 10s on here. Don't you worry. All 24 of you and our one commenter, Matthew.
Shout out, Matthew.
Shout out Matthew for commenting on our last video.
Okay, so if you like this video and you liked Baby Driver, join us next week for The Goonies.
That's right, The Princess Diary. Oh,
We're doing The Princess Diaries.
you're gonna like
And you're gonna.
and subscribe to it. We have this thing where we say the same thing too much. It's weird. But yeah, The Goonies next week. Another one of my favorite films. Another one of your favorite films. We have some guests, uninvited.
What up?
This moth is gonna get more views than.
Okay, get the fuck away from us.
We're gonna edit some of this, but maybe. The Goonies!
The
All right.
Goonies!
So next week we will be reviewing The Goonies. I imagine we'll watch it sometime in the next few days. Maybe Again, yeah, this is another film that we've seen about a million times. Yeah, go ahead and prepare yourself. We're going to be talking about the ending of this movie about half the video. It's exceptional. But anyways, we'll get to that next week.
Next week, DKKS breaks down The Goonies. And right now, we're going to bring you to our resident writer, Tyler Austin Jones.
To talk about the writing of the film, William Goldman, who wrote the screenplay and the original book, he did a great and fantastic job. Not only was he able to cut down his book to suit the dialogue of the film, he made it wholesome also, but at the same time very witty. It's something that not only children can enjoy, but adults can too. The dialogue feels not snappy, but almost as it's going, it's at its own pace, and it was so cute, but funny that you can tell the actors had a great time doing it. The story is simple but perfect. It doesn't try to overcomplicate itself. It's a story within a story. It's this good old grandfather trying to talk to his grandson, and in that story you see love, you see revenge, you see everything that makes a great story, and that made it classic.
And how old were you when you first saw the film?
I was, oh my god, I was 18.
Mm-hmm.
I was 18 when I first saw the film, and when I got done, matter of fact, not even just when I got done, throughout the whole entire film, I was smiling from ear to ear. As every single piece of dialogue was said, people can be like, oh, this is cheesy. It's supposed to be cheesy. It's supposed to be wholesome. If this, it was, let me see, the film was released in 1987. And the original book was released in 1973. And that's a 14-year difference, but he was able to make it still sound like it fits the dialogue today. It was better than most romance comedy films that you could find in theaters today. So I tip my hat to William Goldman.
Now, one last thing. If you could say that you walked away from this film with one feeling, what would that feeling be?
Easy happiness, and with every single moment that I was watching that film, ear to ear.
Special shout out to Tyler Jones,
Hell of a man.
our residential writing expert. We forced him to watch The Princess Bride for the first time back freshman year, I believe it was, and he loved it. He watched it again with us recently. He's the man. He's a good friend, good roommate, whatever. None of y'all got to worry about that. I just want to praise the guy a little bit. But yeah, thank y'all for joining us for our breakdown of The Princess Bride.
Join us next week for The Goonies. We really hope all 24 of you are enjoying these breakdowns, and tell your friends, man.
Yeah.
Or don't. I don't give a fuck.
As I said last time, we don't give a shit if you guys like, comment, subscribe. But
It'd
we're
be
going to keep
pretty
doing it. We're going to keep doing it regardless, and we have a good time. So,
And
yeah.
That's what it's about.
Exactly. So appreciate you guys.